Must be a slow news day. It's time for the what if game. Houston Texans version. There's a lot of what ifs throughout Houston Texans history. You can go all the way back to the first draft in franchise history. Should they have taken Julius Peppers instead of David Carr? The answer is obviously yes. Should they have taken Aaron Rodgers instead of Travis Johnson? The answer is obviously yes. But for the sake of this exercise, in the latest installment of The Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content with your boy Landry Locker, we're going to focus on the Nick Caserio rebuild and how things could have changed, including the biggest nightmare possible. And it's not Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. Hit my damn intro. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah.
Welcome to the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can catch me right here in the Locker Room and throughout the season. I'll be all over the place. Number one source for Texans digital content. Little late night edition here. 10:30 is when we stream. And I want to get into the Texans, and we'll stream throughout the day, and we'll put videos out throughout the day. If you missed the Jonathan Taylor video, be sure to go back and check that out. Shout out to HDAV. What's up, Landry? Let's get the party started. Hit the like button for sure. By the way, we got it pinned at the top. If you want to hop on, if you got something to say, the lines are open. Just make sure you're ready to go, and we'll get right into it. But let's talk about 10 things that could have happened that would have changed the rebuild as we know it with Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio, heading into his fourth season, seems like it's been a longer time because we didn't anticipate the vibes being as good as they currently are. But it could have been a lot worse, and there's a lot of things that could have happened that could have changed things significantly. I appreciate everyone for coming through. I do want to emphasize a lot of this stuff is luck. And that's not to take away from Nick Caserio. That's not to take away from the job that he's done. But look, sometimes you get lucky. The San Francisco 49ers, if they would have thought Joe Montana was the next big thing, they would have drafted him earlier. The New England Patriots, they would have taken Tom Brady a lot earlier. Emmitt Smith fell in the Cowboys' lap. A lot of times it's good to be lucky, and a lot of times when you get lucky, you take advantage of it. You combine it with being good, and that's how you figure stuff out. Let's start with the most polarizing thing. This is the one that I think is the most polarizing, and this is the one that I think people point to the most. Number one. What if Bryce Young, not CJ Stroud, would have been the pick in the 2023 NFL draft? Now, I was a Bryce Young guy. I do not hide behind that. I was a Bryce or bust guy. I was wanting the Texans to get Bryce Young. I was wanting them to build around Bryce Young. What would have happened if the Texans would have gotten Bryce Young instead of CJ Stroud? I think there's a section of Texans fans that just think it would have been the ultimate disaster, almost as if you look at what Bryce Young did last year and you look at the state of his organization, you look at what CJ did, there's almost a notion that, man, if they would have gotten Bryce Young, none of this would have been possible. The vibes would be terrible. They would suck. This would be one of the laughing stocks of the NFL, and you would have to watch CJ Stroud go out there and lead the Carolina Panthers to the playoffs. I don't necessarily think that's the case. And I'm not sitting here. Obviously, if they did a redraft, you're taking CJ Stroud 9 times out of 10. And if they put an imaginary gun to my head and they said, who do you take? You're taking CJ Stroud 10 times out of 10 with what you've seen. You'd be foolish not to. But if you look at the way that this organization is laid out with the Houston Texans, and we'll get into the DeMeco Ryans hypothetical, including the biggest nightmare possible that I think would have the Texans in maybe even bigger football hell than they were in 2020. Bryce Young in this situation, if you have DeMeco Ryans culture, you have Bobby Slowick, you surround him with the weapons that CJ Stroud has developed, and a lot of these weapons have been developed because of CJ Stroud. I don't think that, like, I don't think this team is as good, but I don't think like it's the end of the world. I just don't. I don't really believe that. Do I think the Texans are better off with CJ Stroud? I do, but I don't think all hell would break loose if if Bryce Young would have come into this situation. And there's a portion of people, and we live in like a got you era where everybody's trying to say, gotcha, you said this, but this has happened. Like, nobody thought that the Texans were a stable organization. People didn't think this was like the ideal surroundings for a quarterback last year. Now, were people being a little bit more critical than they needed to be? Yes. But in the NFL, sometimes what you expect is not what actually happens. That happens all the time. I think this situation, I think we can all agree on this. If we just take CJ Stroud, we take Bryce Young, we throw them to the side, based on what we've seen in the fluid process that is sports and the NFL, the Texans are in a much better position for a rookie quarterback than the Carolina Panthers. So this notion that, Bryce Young would have just sucked here, I don't agree. I do agree that CJ Stroud is obviously the better option. But I think that it would have been interesting to see what Bryce Young would have done. And the other thing about it that I think is funny is that we're in a situation now where we're talking about Bryce Young and we're talking about CJ Stroud and we're talking about, what would have, what could have, what should have been. The notion that Bryce Young was gonna come here and just absolutely suck, I don't agree with. I don't agree with. And I don't know what CJ would have done in Carolina. I have no idea. Darkside says that would have been a disaster to end up with little Bryce. What if we would have kept the pick and took Will Anderson, Olave, and Gosh Allen? I'm thinking you're mixing Olave up with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Maybe. We wouldn't have gotten Tank Dell. I think that's possible. And again, this is the whole point of this exercise. Like, what would have changed? I think the Texans would obviously be in a not much better situation. I still think if they get Bryce at 2, they trade up for Will Anderson. But the other thing about it is you hear this notion like, well, the Texans, they lucked out and Lovie Smith, let's give Lovie Smith a statue because the Texans won that game. If people knew what CJ Stroud was going to look like, the Texans would have taken a knee every play of that Colts game. If they would have known that they were going to get what they got out of CJ Stroud, they wouldn't have even risked Carolina having the chance to get him. So that's the other thing about this that I think is funny. Like, it's not like the Texans looked at this. They would have taken Bryce Young 1. I'm not pulling that out of my ass. Like, they would have taken Bryce Young 1. They would have done that. But if they would have known CJ Stroud was what CJ Stroud is and CJ Stroud's flaws and the stuff that we talked about heading in the draft was going to get proven wrong, that they would have tackled Lovie Smith trying to win that game. 100%, 1,000%. So the Bryce Young thing, that's number one. How would it have changed? I don't think it would have been a huge nightmare. I don't think you would be talking like Super Bowl and stuff, though, because I think it's clear that CJ Stroud's the better quarterback. So that's number one. It is the Locker Room. Be sure to subscribe, like, right along. I'm Landry Locker. Appreciate everyone for coming through. What if number 2? What if the Texans don't trade up for Will Anderson in 2023? What if they don't trade up for Will Anderson in 2023? What happens there? Keep in mind they had pick 12. They had pick 33. What if they don't trade up for Will Anderson? That would mean that you would have 12, you would have 33, you would have had 2 firsts this year. What if they don't do that? Get your comments in. I'm going to get me a little sip real quick. I think this one's interesting because I wonder, had the Texans not traded with Arizona, does Will Anderson fall back maybe closer like to 5? Like, does Indianapolis, because I think there's the video of Indianapolis on the phone with Arizona talking about trading up because they want to get their quarterback. Do the Texans then, could they trade with Arizona at 4? Could Arizona trade back even more? Does Will Anderson fall? Does someone get like overzealous and decide to trade up for a quarterback? That one would have been interesting. I do look at what the Texans would have done at 12-33, and I think that's an interesting one because I think at 12, they're definitely going receiver. I think it could have been Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think it could have been Zay Flowers, which means there would be no Tank Dell. At 33, do they do they get Sam Laporta? Is it possible that they take Sam Laporta or try to get him? Best tight end in the NFL last year statistically? Perhaps. But I think they ended up getting a guy that they believe is going to end up being an elite ball player, was already a Pro Bowl ball player, and he also, perhaps most importantly, he fits what they believe their culture is. So what happens if the Texans don't trade up for Will Anderson? How does that work? These TV says DeMeco still gets good players and has a decent defense. Okay. Jay Deuce says they would have taken JSN at 12. In my opinion, I would agree with that. They trade up to 9 for Carter. Whew. Would have been kind of interesting. I think that's a good throw out. Shout out to Justin there. So yeah, number 2 was, what if the Texans don't trade up for Will Anderson in 2023? Number 3, we're going through the what ifs. It's a slow news day, very slow news day around here. What ifs that would have impacted the Texans' legacy? What if number 3? You knew this was coming. What if the Texans go with Sauce instead of Stingley at 3 in 2022? Now, people will point to Sauce Gardner. He's a multiple-time All-Pro. Derek Stingley has had trouble staying on the field in his 2 seasons, although last year when he was on the field, he was elite. He was the defensive player of the month. But what if the Texans go with Sauce instead of Stingley? I'm not going to say those guys completely flop and like are switch spots, but I'll say this. Sauce Gardner ain't that good in Lovie Smith's defense. Now, the one thing he is that Derek Stingley has not been is he is available. So there is that. He also has had, specifically in his rookie season, he had a better defense in front of him. He had more talent in front of him. So there's that. But I think Derek Stingley, if he gets to go play for Robert Saleh in front of that defense, and again, he's got to stay healthy. I do think his first year there was kind of some conservative decision-making to scratch him on top of him being healthy. Pause. I don't think Sauce Gardner is Sauce Gardner if that happens. Now, I think that you can make a case that he might be on the same caliber as Stingley, maybe. And what Stingley's given the Texans, but Sauce ain't Sauce here in Houston. And I think there's a chance that Stingley's way better, specifically at the beginning in New York. I knew this was coming. Sauce gets away with a lot of flags in New York, in my opinion. You don't have to say in your opinion. I always laugh at that when people say that. Of course it's your opinion. That's always like you're arguing with someone online or something, or discussing, and they say, well, that's your opinion. Yeah, obviously, sir. I mean, for sure. He does get away with a lot of flags. He wouldn't have been as good starting off. Let's be honest. I think that's fair to say. I don't think Texans fans feel like, I think early on you were like, man, we should have gone with that. But I don't think. I think I'd rather have a Tank than JSN, which is kind of wild. Would not say the same. I like Tank, but I'm a JSN dude. But I think the question with 3 is Sauce Gardner is effective in Houston under Lovie as he was in New York his rookie season. I think that's a good question to ask. Sauce would have been more reliable than Stingley did in being on Ireland. Agree. I think we're still happy with the pick and the outcome. I would agree. Am I live? Yeah. Well, what do you think, sir? It's 10:30. Andrew says, "What up, Landry? How you doing, my friend?" What if number 4? Now, this is, I think, one of the most important decisions that the Texans made for a number of reasons. And I think this is, I almost feel like he doesn't get the credit he deserves because everything else around him has gone so perfect. But I think he's the straw that stirs the drink. And that's DeMeco Ryans. What if the Texans don't hire DeMeco Ryans? What happens? Who would you have wanted him to hire? We'll get into a nightmare situation that I think was, I think we'd be in a worse situation if this happened than we were in 2020 with the POS and BOB. Right? For sure. Wifey agrees. What if the Texans don't hire DeMeco Ryans? If they hadn't hired DeMeco, who would you have want them to go with? Now, I was on the air, and I said that Shane Steichen I would have been okay with. I actually said I would have been okay with Mike Kafka, but it would have been like a Steichen or Kafka type of situation. And I think perhaps from a football coach standpoint, I think you can make a case that Shane Steichen's in the same class as DeMeco Ryans. As a matter of fact, I don't even think you have to make a case. I think in fairness, I think that's true. I think we've seen that. What Shane Steichen did last year, I thought it was very, very underappreciated. I thought he deserved more coach of the year consideration. I think we saw how much Philadelphia missed him. I think he's great. I think he's a really great coach. I think DeMeco's a great coach. I also think, though, for the sake of this, as we go back to the question, number 4, if we don't hire DeMeco Ryans, then what happens? Here's my thing here with DeMeco. I think there was a certain need, and we'll get into this as well as the time goes on, because I think the fans are going to factor into these questions. But I think there was a certain need around here that was deeper than coaching. And I think coaching mattered. Like, it's not like you went and hired Brian Cushing off the street straight from, the power clean section or something like that at the local gym. You hired a guy that Denver wanted. You hired a guy that every team with an opening wanted. And oh, by the way, he happened to be one of the most revered players in the history of this franchise during a time when trust issues with this franchise were at an all-time low. And I think that, on top of what DeMeco is as a coach, and I think what he would have been as a coach anywhere, I think that adds another element, especially when you factor in how the hell things were the couple years before you got DeMeco Ryans. So as good of a coach as, you can say that Shane Steichen is, and as much as you can say, like, maybe some other coaches would have done a good job, would they have generated that vibe, that passion, that culture, that nostalgia that DeMeco Ryans did? I think the answer is no. I think it's 100% the answer is no. I remember walking into that press conference, man. There was just all types of nostalgia. There was all types of just vibes, man. There was vibes. Let me see if I can pull this up. You walked into that press conference. I mean, it was basically a shrine. You walked in. I remember I was on the air with my boy Wade Smith, and y'all know how I am with the podium. Someone says Cole Thompson sent him in. Shout out to Cole Thompson. Shout out to CT. Someone says hire Eric Bieniemy. Okay, we'd be in football hell still. I mean, we'd be in football hell still. My gosh, that would have been bad. But without DeMeco Ryans, you're not where you're at right now. And I remember Wade was talking to me and he said, "Oh, I know you're the podium critic. You're just wait till you hear this guy talk." And I said, "What the hell does that mean?" And Wade looks over to me. He's sitting to his right in the studio. where co-hosts are supposed to sit, like right to your right, not like with their back turned to the producer, and working on other stuff. And he was like, man, you'll see. He just looks over at me and he says, you'll see. And I said, okay. Walked into the press conference, sat down, listened to DeMeco Ryans. Had DeMeco Ryans never played for the Houston Texans, that would have been an A+ press conference. The fact that he did, it made it an A+, you can skip the rest of the semester type of press conference. It was incredible. And I think when we talk about what if they didn't hire DeMeco Ryans, maybe you would have eventually found your groove, and maybe Shane Steichen does his thing last year. But I don't think the overall vibes and the overall feels are where they are. So I don't want to call it a disaster. I just want to say, with like all the factors and all the sins of the past, when you patch that all in, not hiring DeMeco Ryans would have sucked. So we've gone through 4 so far, and I appreciate all the newbies. Be sure to like, subscribe right along. We got a lot going on for the season. I'll reset number 4, catch y'all up with what's going on. What if Bryce Young, not CJ Stroud, was taken in the 2023 NFL draft? I don't think that would have been as bad as a lot of people think. What if number 2, the Texans don't trade up for Will Anderson in 2023? Do they take Jackson Smith and Jigba? Does that mean no Tank? Could they have traded up for Will a little bit later? What happens there? What if 3, Sauce instead of Stingley? I think we can all agree that no one's too disappointed in it with what we saw from Sting last year, but Sauce wouldn't have been Sauce, for damn sure not his rookie year. What if number 4, the Texans don't hire DeMeco Ryans? And that's where we are at. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Ronald says the coach from Michigan State or Washington would have been a good option. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that, my friend. If Ryans was hired somewhere else, who do you truly believe we would have gotten? I think they would have gotten Shane Steichen or Jonathan Gannon or maybe Kafka. I think they like Kafka a little bit. I'm not pulling that out of my ass. They like Kafka a little bit. Like and subscribe. I'll come to your house and eat all your snacks. I don't know what the hell that means. Hand up. I wanted Steichen at first. The mindset of not knowing to replace an OC every year, but DeMeco has intangibles motivated. And I think that's fair. And that's kind of one of the things where and I wanted Bryce Young, Bryce or bust right here. That's me. But I actually think, like, if that was your reservation, I don't necessarily think that reservation goes away, and I don't think it's a moving goalpost. I do think that DeMeco Ryans is the type of coach that will be able to overcome that type of thing, because I think he's open-minded, and I think the system's in place, and I think the quarterback works with the system. And I think there's a natural feel, and there's natural trust there. But I don't like, if once Bobby Slowick leaves, or once, Gerard leaves, and whatever they do, I mean, that reservation, that reappears. So we haven't even seen that kind of play out. That's kind of like getting something and putting it in the vault. You're obviously not going to be upset that they hired DeMeco, but like, if Bobby Slowick leaves and all of a sudden the offense sucks, that's why you were concerned. Because I think in Indianapolis, regardless of what the quarterback is, you feel like Shane Steichen's going to have the quarterback up to a high enough ceiling. So, yeah, I think that's fair. Steven Nelson jokes from Chris Watkins. Milk dud man, best hire ever. No doubt. Joe Blue. A lot of people wanted to pass on QB also and tank for Caleb Williams. Yeah, I mean, wanted to. We're willing to, for sure. But yeah. You say if we took Young, it wouldn't be bad, but only because you was a young guy. Got to keep that alive somehow, huh? No, not at all. I just don't think it would have been like an absolute disaster. I think the Texans are set up, and you think I give a rat's ass about being wrong? I couldn't give a rat's ass about that, to be honest with you. I just think that the Texans organization is set up, and I think that we can agree right now that the Texans organization is set up to where you have a good coach, you have a good culture, you have better weapons than we anticipated, you have an offensive coordinator that's already interviewing for head coaching jobs. Yes, CJ Stroud had a lot to do with that, and I think that it wouldn't have been a complete disaster. I don't think Bryce Young looks as bad with the Texans as he did with the Carolina Panthers. So maybe you do. I don't. I don't think that's the same. So now I don't got to keep anything alive. Trust me. I can admit when I'm wrong. It doesn't. I don't get off to being right. If Steichen was hired by the Texans, would Ryans have ended up in Indy? No, I think he ends up in Denver. If that doesn't happen, he actually turned down the Indy interview. Now, in fairness, and Derek, I know you follow close enough to know this. The Indy interview was turned down after he'd interviewed with the Texans, and it seemed kind of like a foregone conclusion he was going to be the guy. So maybe, and then we're just flipping coaches. The vibes aren't as good, but I think the football coaching is like kind of on the same caliber-ish, maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. See, that's the part of this exercise. That would be disgusting. That would be very gross to watch. For sure. JR is on one right now. You do care about being wrong, brother. You're Landry, the goalpost mover. Landry, Mr. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I don't know what a lot of your stuff means, my friend. I don't really care, my man. That's a nice chain, though, and you look good. Nice selfie. I'm sure that's like your Bumble pic. Congratulations, man. You're looking smooth. You're looking smart. Might have used a filter, but don't care about being wrong, brother. Doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, appreciate you, man. That's a good profile pic. I hope you're picking up bitches with that, or dudes, whatever you like. I'm not judging here. This is a judge-free zone, my friend. Next, what if? And the DeMeco Ryans was number 4. Number 5, what if Deshaun Watson never has off-field legal issues? And I'm not going to even pretend that he wouldn't have demanded a trade, because quite frankly, I understand why Deshaun Watson would have demanded a trade. I have no issue with it. I wouldn't have wanted to be here as well. If I had gone through what Deshaun Watson went through. Now, maybe there was a change in his game, and maybe that's another blessing in disguise. But if Deshaun Watson never has the legal issues, and we've touched on this in the past, you don't have to hold on to Deshaun. You're not going to hold on to Deshaun Watson for 2 years like you did when you were waiting for the legal issues because you wanted the trade value to be maxed out. So most likely that means that you're likely trading Deshaun Watson before the 2021 NFL draft. And most likely you're taking a quarterback in the draft that produced Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Zach Wilson. And perhaps the Jets would have been the team that traded for Deshaun Watson because they had the extra draft equity. Remember, they had the extra draft picks. Kind of similar to what the Texans had when they made the Will Anderson trade and were more willing to make like a draft day trade. So I'm not sitting here wishing this on anyone, especially if, Deshaun didn't do what he was accused of doing. And I've never been one of those people that calls him, predator, all that type of stuff. I think there was some predatory behavior, which is what Arian Foster said. But you can make a case that if that doesn't happen, then perhaps the Texans are trying to recover from taking one of those quarterbacks. Perhaps that's what the Texans are doing. And that would mean that there would be no CJ Stroud. That would mean that the draft equity that they ended up getting would be a little bit different. And who knows what the hell we're talking about? We might be talking about a whole new general manager. So the Deshaun off-field stuff, while it was kind of painful to watch him, in the building and not really contributing, partaking, whatever, props to Nick Caserio for being patient. And they got pretty lucky with that. JR says, appreciate the compliments. No problem, man. You got to show that arm a little bit more though when you're there. If you're trying to really make it look good, man. You're hiding that it's a selfie, but you gotta kind of get the arm, like show a little bit more of that arm. Roll up that sleeve a little bit, Holmes. You'd be good. What if number 6? It is the Locker Room, number 1 source for Texans daily digital content. Be sure to subscribe, like, right along. What if number 6? Talking about how stuff could have changed with the rebuild. Sometimes it's beneficial to be lucky and good. What if number 6? What if in the 2022 NFL draft, the Houston Texans do not trade back from 13? Looking at Kenyon Green last year. This was at training camp. This was before he ended up getting hurt. Don't know if he looked like he was in shape or not, but what if the Houston Texans don't trade back from number 13? Now, I think we all know what would have happened. I think they would have taken Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. I think they wanted Jameson Williams or like Jameson Williams out of Alabama as well. But he ended up going earlier to Detroit. I actually think he's a really sneaky, good fantasy draft pick as well. But Kenyon Green, what if the Texans don't trade back and they end up taking Kyle Hamilton? Now, naturally, this question gets asked, and then you kind of say, well, they would have Kyle Hamilton and they would have, CJ Stroud and stuff. But is it possible that Kyle Hamilton maybe wins you a game or two more to where you're in different drafting position in 2023? Like, could he have pushed you back out of 2 to where you don't get CJ Stroud? Maybe you're having to settle for Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. Again, that's the point of this exercise. I do think that Kyle Hamilton would have been the guy. And I think if Jameson Williams were on the board, they would have taken Jameson Williams, not just pulling this out of nowhere. But what if he doesn't trade back from 13? What if he takes Tyler Linderbaum instead of Kenyon Green? And they got the center position locked up. Be interesting for sure. What up, GOH713? Wouldn't want to be anywhere in the world. Appreciate you, brother, for coming through. Stingley and Hamilton would have been deadly. Whew-wee. Man, you ain't lying there. What if there were no ifs? I think there's like some line there. What is it? Fifths or something like that? We'd all be drunk. Hamilton is way better than Petrie. Yeah. I didn't even know that there were there. What if there were no questions? I'll think about that for a sec. I'll have to get a rip on that. Man, where's it at? Hamilton and Stingley is a fire first round. Whew. And then what do you do with that Petrie pick? I think they wanted Breece Hall, but that ended up happening. I think they wanted Breece. I don't know what they would have done. The Petrie thing. This is the beauty. This is the mind exercise. This is the must be a slow news day type of thing. Must be a slow news day. This is kind of where like you twist up and you kind of start thinking. You're sitting out with your friend on the patio. Sorry if I'm offending anybody, hypothetically. But you twist up on some of that
high-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets. Did you know what that was?
No, I
Me
do.
neither.
Yeah, I got it, bro. Rest in peace to Richard Durrett. But yeah, this is just kind of what the point of this is. There's a lot of layers. And I always get a kick out of when you're having these conversations and someone says, what if Lockdog didn't get betrayed? I didn't get betrayed by anybody, man. Those are my people over there. Most of them, 99% of them. Yeah, we're all good. For sure, no doubt. But yeah, I like these types of things. I do get a kick out of people who like go in chat rooms. None of y'all. But they go in chat rooms like, why are we talking about the past? Why Why are we talking about what ifs? Dude, it's the beauty of being a sports fan. It's the beauty of being being a sports fan. What if Bill O'Brien was never GM? Would he still be here? This is a good one. This is a good curveball. Appreciate the question. Darth Derp. See, this is the BS that I hate about Bill O'Brien, and I like Bill O'Brien. I've talked to Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was very aware of all the stuff I would say, football idiot, King Bill, all that type of stuff. Here's my thing with Bill O'Brien. He's lying. He's lying. Okay? He can sit there and say, I didn't want to be the GM. But you wanted to do GM things behind the scenes. You wanted to scream and yell at Rick Smith. You wanted to create conflict. You wanted to argue with him about players. You didn't want to just let him set the roster. You wanted to have a hand in it. And then when you ran Rick Smith out of town, when you and the POS ran Brian Gain out of town, which I called Jack on before, you wanted to be able to do these things, but you just didn't want the title. So it's not like they gave Bill O'Brien. The reason Bill O'Brien was given the GM title is because he wanted to do GM things without the accountability. And that's deceiving. That's misleading. So this notion that like Bill O'Brien all of a sudden like was just hands off and wanted nothing to do with players and was just letting GMs do their job and then all of a sudden he was labeled GM and all of a sudden he had to negotiate contracts and he had to it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a total and complete lie. It's the reason that he was given that title is because he wanted to do it, but he didn't want the accountability. He wanted to be able to go up there and say, I coached the football team. But he didn't want to just do that. So Bill O'Brien, as cool as he is to have a beer with and all that type of stuff, and as much as his players love him, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, that's a lie. It's a lie. And in the middle of that, I will say, in the middle of the sound clip, because I did listen to it for context, he did kind of say, well, it's not necessarily my way. I've learned a little bit and all this type of stuff. Yeah, but he was saying like 12 years ago and stuff. It's an absolute lie for Bill O'Brien. He's lying his ass off. What if Baseball Spo had opinions about football? He does. He does. You'd probably say, not my money. Shout out to Spo, man. Shout out to Spo. But B.O.B., he's lying his ass off. Lying his ass off 100%. You're talking about Watson and massages? Come on, man. But yeah, OB's 100% lying there. Thought number 7. What if number 7? And y'all know I was on this train. I was on this train like crazy. The McCown train. What if the Texans hire McCown in 2021? What if the Texans decide to hire Josh McCown in 2021? Now, let's think about this. They ended up going with David Culley. David Culley ended up being the I think they had the 3rd worst record in the league. Yes, that's how they got Stingley. What if they ended up hiring McCown? What was the worst that could have happened there? And I thought that was part of the amusement. As much as the McCown train was a thing, I was always on the Josh McCown's going to be a head coach train. You can go back. There were receipts from 2016, 2017. I always thought he was going to be a head coach. I think Hugh Jackson told me it in 2016, which is not the best endorsement you can get. But would it have been worse? That's my thing. Like, would it have been worse if the Texans had hired McCown instead of Culley? Or could they have been just as terrible and ended up firing him after one season and not really losing much track? Like, what would have happened? What's the worst that would have happened? You were the 3rd worst team in the league, Could you have been even worse to where maybe you get Aiden Hutchinson? What if Josh McCown's one game worse than David Culley and you end up getting Aiden Hutchinson, number 2 overall? What if that happens? Right after the Jags take Travon Walker. Does he end up being better? Does the fact that he was clearly brought in by Easterby, does that mean that he hangs around in 2022? What if the Texans would have hired McCown? It would have been amusing, and my God, they would have gotten completely scrutinized. They actually tried to do it again in 2022. But Russ says result probably would have been the same, perhaps. No doubt. Brandon says that's why you didn't show my McCown statements. Nah, there they are right there, McCown train. No doubt. I was down with that. Now, the thing about it is, how much worse would it have been? How much better would it have been? Would it have mattered? Because that was kind of the mud area that 2 years. Who knows what would have happened there? But yeah, that's another one just to kind of think about, kind of hit that
high-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
Or
Did you know
don't.
what that was?
Now I
Me
do.
neither.
and see what's going on there. Next one. What if number 8? Let's take a moment to just remember one of the best exchanges with Lovie Smith. I think this was with Brian T. Smith. This was Lovie Smith after they lost another game. This was some vintage Lovie Smith during his time with the Texans.
Lovie, you mentioned the fans deserve better. I mean, I look out at the stands.
Loved
They're
it.
mostly empty. You guys were booed multiple times. This has been happening all year.
No, let me stop there. It hasn't been happening all year. You can say, well, I'm talking about the fans booing us, all right?
You guys have been booed.
Yeah, we've been booed, yes. And every time something is bad, fans are going to boo, and they have a right to do that. What is your question?
I was going to ask my question.
What is it?
How does this get better? How do you improve this?
By putting a better product on the football field.
Why didn't that happen today?
Because I didn't think I should do it today.
You don't think you should be better?
Today?
I'm not going to tell you that, all right? I mean, what do you expect me to say right now? We just got beat. Now, if there was something that we should have done right away, we would have done that right away. Where we are with our football team, we're searching for answers is what we're doing. And we'll keep working on different combinations.
Right, we come in, and every week you're kind of telling us the same thing. You haven't made any changes. Why
Because
keep doing the same thing and you get the same result?
Because sometimes change for what? Just change to change? I think leave that up to us, all right? Right now, we don't think we're in that position, all right?
Lovie was hilarious on the back end. It was absolutely hilarious. But what that brings me to the next one. Appreciate everyone for rolling through another late night locker room. By the way, we're gonna have a ton of these. Y'all know 1030 has been consistent the last year and a half-ish. I think we got like 950,000 videos in like a short time. We're almost 10,000 subscribers. The most watched daily local Houston sports digital thing. But what if, because you heard this often, what if the Texans get bullied into keeping Lovie for a second season? And there was a push, man, and it was unfair as hell. It was unfair as hell. Despite the fact that the Texans gave David Culley an opportunity to do something that he'd never been given the opportunity to do. And he made a crap ton of money doing it. You want to talk about a happy dude? Talk to someone who's talked to David Culley lately. He is a happy dude. Despite the fact no one would have hired Lovie Smith even to be their defensive coordinator. And the Texans did that and then made him a head coach. There was a real push from some of the national folks that, man, you can't have 2 straight one-and-done coaches. Despite the fact it happened in San Francisco with Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula. Despite the fact you had 70 whatever million in dead cap and had a quarterback that was trying to leave. You can't do that. What if the Texans would have listened to that noise? What if they would have listened to that noise? And what if they would have said, you know what? We're going to give Lovie Smith a second year. We're going to skip out. We're going to listen to Stephen A. Smith, who all of a sudden he's already forgotten what he said. The outlandish, insulting, ridiculous stuff that he said. What if the Texans just said, you know what? We're going to give Lovie a second season because Stephen A. Smith and all these ESPN folks are pushing some sort of narrative that's very unfair. What if they would have done that? I would say that's football hell, but I think it could be a lot worse. I'll explain in a sec. We'll get to the biggest nightmare possible in a sec. But before that, let's get to number 9. But first, let's get a couple comments from Quincy. What if the tailgating experience goes back to peak form? It's already there, brother. I don't know where you were at last year. It peaked up. It peaked up at the end for sure. What if Hannah had stepped in sooner? I don't know that she stepped in. I don't know about that narrative. I think her and Cal are a team, and I think Cal kind of was in a tougher spot on the back end. Didn't handle it great. But what if the Texans had kept Lovie because they'd listened to all the idiots talking about what they were talking about, and they just forget it now. Oh, Texans are awesome. Was garbage from the beginning. There's a lot of criticism to be had with the Texans, and I've done it, but that was absolutely outlandish, absolutely ridiculous. What if number 9? What if the fans never spoke with their wallets? Look at these empty ass seats. This is Halloween. Everybody had jokes. This is NFL memes on X. Let's see what their joke was. Houston Texans fans win Halloween. A bunch of Texans fans showed up to the stadium dressed as empty seats. Now, some people say you ride or die. No matter how bad your team is, you show up. Where's the line in the sand there? If you have a POS scumbag like Jack Easterby doing what he's doing, you have a dishonest fool in Bill O'Brien lying, acting like he just randomly got assigned to be GM. You're trading some of your best players. Your other best players want nothing to do with you. Do you still show up, drive up to NRG, park? And I'm not judging anyone who does. Shout out to y'all. Put your face paint on. Go sit in the stands. On the way to your seat, pay $45 at the concession stand for 3 hot dogs, 2 draft beers, and a soda. Walk your ass to your seat and sit there and watch Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor in their rotating quarterback competition? Or do you say we've had enough? Do you let them know we've had enough? Shout out to all the loyal fans. I don't think there's a right way to fan. But if everyone had just shown up, and let's say the sellout streak continues, and people are sitting there saying Easterby for president, Bill O'Brien is our king, and screw DeAndre Hopkins, we love David Johnson, do the changes get made? What if the fans don't speak with their wallets? You hear it all the time. A lot of times it doesn't happen. If during the most dysfunctional time, at a time when people were on the season ticket wait list for years, they thought they would never even stay alive and be on that season ticket wait list. And then all of a sudden, because of this, they're getting phone calls and getting discounts. What if this wouldn't have happened? Are we where we're at right now? It's hard to effing imagine. It's hard to effing imagine that without that the significant changes are made. If you're still selling out stadiums and getting full support for crap, which is what it was, absolute crap. And that's why when I was on the flagship, I called it crap. I called Easterby a POS. And the Texans let me too. Shout out to the Texans, man. They let everyone at Sports Radio 610, from Seth Payne all the way to Sean Pendergast, all the way to Show and Clint. They let them say what they need to say. And props to them for doing that too. Props to them. But without that, I don't know that too much changes. For sure. I really, really don't know that too much changes. So I think that they do deserve some credit. For sure. Where were people at when those times? Where were y'all at? They were sending a message, man. They were sending a message. Shout out to Spin. Shout out to Debbie the Texan. Shout out to Marty from Nuff Said Tailgate. Shout out to all the diehards. They were sending a message, though, man. They were sending a message, and I think if that had not happened and everyone would have just been in their seat and there weren't a perfect mix, I don't know that where we're at right now. As much as you do like the diehard, and some people just watched it like supporting like a son with a drug habit or something like that. I don't know. That's not like the best analogy, but I mean, I think that was kind of one of the things. But yeah, I don't know where those people were at. Who knows? But shout out to those folks, man. Shout out to those folks for doing their thing. So we're 9 deep. We're about to get to 10. Reset. Number 1, what if Bryce Young, not CJ Stroud, had gone to the Texans in the 2023 draft? Number 2, what if the Texans don't trade up for Will Anderson in 2023? Number 3, Sauce instead of Stingley at number 3 in 2022. Number 4, what if the Texans don't hire DeMeco Ryans? Number 5, what if Deshaun never has off-field issues? Number 6, what if Caserio doesn't trade back from 13 in 2022? Number 7, what if the Texans hire McCown in 2021? And we're about to get to the most salacious thing. Trust me, this would have sucked. Number 8, what if the Texans get bullied into keeping Lovie a second season? Number 9, what if the fans never speak with their wallets? And the biggest nightmare of all, I want y'all to guess this. Let me know. The biggest nightmare that would have kept the Texans in football. I think this would have been worse than 2020. I'm being dead ass serious. What do y'all think it is? Because this is one thing that scared the hell out of me. Man, this scared the hell out of me. This would have put us in football hell. And again, I was a Brycer bus guy. What would have put them in football hell? No Easterby, that's a long shot. Davis Mills had a good season, no. Bill O'Brien, no. Drafting Levis, no. This would have screwed up everything. Everything that we previously mentioned. This would have been hell. Absolute hell. What if the Texans would have hired Sean Payton? Huh. I don't even know where to start on this one. Think about this for a second. Think about it for a second. And this was a popular topic. This was a very, very popular topic. We actually talked about it on the show. I think I actually have it in here. Let me see. This was on In the Loop, Sports Radio 610. And I remember going to the Texans. This was the first time that they did their uniform unveil. Hannah McNair came up to me and said, "Oh, you hate Sean Payton." I said, "Yes, I do." Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This was the discussion that she was referring to. I think this was on In the Loop, Sports Radio 610. Shout out to Sports Radio 610 as well. This was the conversation, though.
Sean Payton No thanks.
I don't get it. I just don't understand it. And I've seen and heard and well, I don't want to give up a first round pick. Why? I don't understand. I have a couple of theories.
Now the stability thing I will push back on. I know you probably got a lot. I don't know if this brings stability.
It's Sean Payton.
Yeah, but it's a guy who just left for a year.
It's silly to say, well, he quit on the Saints. Man, I don't want that best coach. I want someone who's not the best coach. All the coaches out there, even DeMeco Ryans, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be, what about this staff and that staff? And the whole theory of the Texans are just defeated, Texans fans. I think there is a real feeling prevalent among a lot of Texans fans of inadequacy. Oh, no, we'll just blow it with Sean Payton. I mean, there's such a defeatist, inadequate, like not deserving. It's kind of like I want to just hug Texans fans like in Good Will Hunting and say, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Go get Sean Payton. Go get him. Blows my mind away. Like, I don't want Sean Payton. I don't want to give up a draft pick. Yes, I do. I want to give up a draft pick for Sean Payton. Yes, I think he's that good. I think he's been proven to that good. And yes, you're right. There's a lot of potential out there of some really good coaches, but it's still potential. And I'm tired of shopping on the island of misfit toys.
They're not shopping on the island of misfit toys.
For head coaches.
Well, these names, I mean, look at the names that they have.
I'm saying they have.
These are the most attractive names on the market.
But the last 2 years they have.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been different.
Yeah.
But this shopping list, this is not that.
No, it's a very impressive
shopping list. They got
shopping
Ben Johnson
list.
in town right now. They're interviewing Shane Steichen tomorrow. They still got the request out with DeMeco Ryans and Jonathan Gannon and Mike Kafka. This is not the island of misfit toys.
Yes. And he's better than all of them and more proven than all of them.
But I don't know that he's necessarily better right now.
Oh, I don't.
For this
See how
situation.
he couldn't be.
For this situation.
I just don't get that. I mean, the situation is ideal.
All right, that was a throwback. That was a throwback conversation. Let's think about what would have happened if they would have gotten Sean Payton. And I want you all to like sit here and I'm going to take you to football hell. And it's actually going to make you feel more heavenly because it didn't happen. You're talking about a guy who would have cost a first and second round pick. That was the price. Broncos traded a first and second round pick, might have been more. So this, like, what would the Texans have done with number 12? You would have no Will Anderson trade because you wouldn't have had that. And you wouldn't have had your second round pick. So that would be gone. Okay? Then you would be bringing in a guy who most likely would have said, I want control over personnel. So you would have pushed Caserio to the side. So you would have not had DeMeco. You would have not had Caserio. You would have not had Will Anderson. You would not have had maximum draft equity. And you could have had DeMeco Ryans or Shane Steichen for free. Oh, by the way, you would have Sean Payton working with CJ Stroud. A lot of people say, well, he made Drew Brees. Contrary to popular belief, Drew Brees was a Pro Bowler before Sean Payton got ahead of him. Got his hands on him. Pause. Is Sean Payton going to sit there and let CJ Stroud be CJ Stroud? Is he going to let CJ Stroud go on $1 million worth of game? Is he going to sit there and try to control him? Of all these scenarios, I would have rather brought back Lovie Smith than Sean Payton. Absolute disaster had that have happened. That would have been football hell for the Texans. You trade your draft equity for an inferior coach. Did Sean Payton save Russell Wilson? Didn't think so. Did Denver look good last year? Didn't think so. You think he's going to be coaching as long as DeMeco Ryans? Don't think so. Do you like the way that Nick Caserio GMs? I would think so. Do you like the mix that DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio are? I would think so. Do you like this offensive system with CJ Stroud that they have brought in, the Kubiak system? I would think so. You want to talk about football hell? Signing that idiot Sean Payton would have been football effing hell. My gosh, thank goodness, man. Lucky. We're lucky. sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. The combination is great. The vibes are great. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, ride along. It's been the Locker Room on YouTube. If you missed my last video, go back and check it out. I kind of dropped it at a weird time, but AFC South, has it become the division of workhorse backs? Are we sleeping on Jonathan Taylor? Go back and check that one out. Be sure to subscribe, like, ride along. Always helps. We're going to keep this going. It's going to get even crazier during the season. Number one source for digital content around here. And I appreciate everyone for coming through. Always remember, when it comes to this Texans stuff, we are all in this together. And oh, by the way, sorry if I offended anyone by constantly mentioning the
high-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
Which
Did you know what that was?
No,
me neither.
Which I might run to right now. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Thanks for the interaction. We're less than a month away from the season. Subscribe to Cody Stoots' channel. Subscribe to Seth Payne's channel. Keep doing your thing. Shout out to everyone out there covering the Texans. Much love. Appreciate Cole Thompson for sending folks out here as well. Fun times, folks. Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the Locker Room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker Room, yeah.